Okay, I am Brad Miller, and today I am joined by two very special people here. I have Stephanie Weidle and Dr. Sheila Furey. I will let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But today we're going to talk about an important event that is coming up in the next couple of weeks. This is a summit that has the title of Medical Freedom and the Constitution Protecting Yourself from Government Overreach. We'll talk a little bit more in just a moment about exactly what that means. But this summit is going to take place October 10th and 11th at Patrick Henry College in Purcellville, Virginia. So let's go ahead and meet our guests here today. So Stephanie, let's start with you. Just if you would give us a brief introduction.
Brad, thank you so much for having us both on today. It's great to be here. I am Stephanie Weidle, the Executive Director of Feds for Freedom. Feds for Freedom is the organization that obtained the COVID-19 vaccine mandate injunction in January of 2022 that saved 400,000 federal employees' jobs from being cut due to their vaccination status. And although it didn't save them from being blatantly discriminated against, barred from their workplaces because of their vaccine status, and some of them refused to test or mask, it kept them from promotions. This did save their jobs. And recently we just settled with the DOJ that further still accountability is sought, and we continue on in that task. But it did tacitly acknowledge that the mandates were unlawful by the concessions given in the settlement. So I met Sheila for the very first time when I went to the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance conference in 2024. And as I am the podcast guest, I asked her, as I am the podcast host, I had her on as a guest to talk about some of her work. And soon after that, she asked Feds for Freedom to co-sponsor the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance and Feds for Freedom conference in April 2025. And we are doing our next one that we're going to be talking about today in October. So Sheila's been a great partner in all of this.
Yeah, Sheila, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Dr. Sheila Furey. I'm the president of Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance, and we are a group of healthcare professionals and concerned citizens that formed in the midst of COVID, and that began by educating people that early event intervention was available, and then we provided education about the danger of the COVID shot. I won't call it a vaccine. And then we realized that the task ahead of us was really more than just COVID, that the corruption within the medical establishment was extensive. And it went all the way from the injections that are given to mothers when they're pregnant that risk their pregnancies, the childhood vaccine schedule, to end of life issues. So medical assistance in dying, otherwise known as convenience killing, all right? And so we had a big task on our hands. And then I met Stephanie and I said, wow, what a great way to combine our efforts. So the medical freedom with medical professionals working together with the federal employees and the military to really have a united front in giving freedom and informed consent to the population. And so it's really been a wonderful working relationship. And so this next conference is really highlighting and building on what we've already established. And we just want to invite everyone to this event because it's going to be the biggest and best so far.
Yeah, and just as Sheila said that VAMFA realized that COVID was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to the issues, so did Feds for Freedom realize the same thing. And in 2023, we changed our name from Feds for Medical Freedom to Feds for Freedom because the government overreach, the corruption we're seeing, the accountability that needs to happen goes way beyond COVID. It's across the board, so many different areas.
Yeah, I think that was been an eye opener for a lot of us is, what happened with all things COVID was so large and so in your face, but at the same time, a lot of people realized, one, how did we get here? How did this even happen in terms of government overreach? And then two, well, where do we go from here? And one of the first things you have to do in figuring out where to go from here is realize it's bigger than just COVID. I mean, this didn't all happen just overnight. Well, Stephanie, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and I wanted to ask you about this. So you mentioned a recent settlement. Can you talk us through exactly what happened there and why that's so important for us to understand?
Right. So the injunction that we got in 2022 was actually in place until after Trump took office. So it was spring of 2025 that our injunction ended. It was in place for over 1,000 days. Even though the Supreme Court requested that the injunction be vacated, it was not. It never was. So a great gift given to us by the Fifth Circuit court judge. So in the spring, our lawyers, after Trump took office, went to the DOJ and started negotiating. And our lawyers asked for a full win. And the DOJ said, no, we can't quite give you a full win because look at all these other cases we have here. We're gonna be, yeah, there are a lot of them, but they were willing to do a couple things for us, and that was to expunge vaccination status, religious exemption records from personnel files. We still have federal employees that are being retaliated against based on their vaccination status. So this will help them. There is the option to opt out of this. If people are still going through litigation, federal employees still going through EEO litigation, they can opt out because that would be considered evidence that they want to have in their file. They can always opt in later on to have them expunged. It also provided a monetary settlement to Feds for Freedom to cover legal fees incurred in this entire process. But what we found out since this settlement was signed August 7th, 2025, is that at least one agency has apparently already indicated they are not going to be complying with OPM guidance on this. So it is an opportunity to Feds for Free to have us stick it to them. They need to follow what was just handed to them by the DOJ. So this was, again, it was a quiet acknowledgement, not loud, that the government was wrong in unlawfully mandating the COVID shots.
Yeah, I know sometimes when people, if they're aware of this specific settlement at all, sometimes people can be of two minds about it because on the one hand, I think all of us want accountability because that's one of the ways in which we ensure that this doesn't happen again. But sometimes you can't immediately get to accountability, and sometimes there are other steps you have to meet along the way. But also, a lot of us are not fundamentally pleased with just some of these precursor steps. We kind of want to make sure that there are more comprehensive victories. So I certainly understand why this is important, but also why some people kind of want to see more. They want more to happen faster because they're concerned about continued government overreach, which I know both of you are also very concerned about. So let's talk a little bit about this particular summit. And also, I wanted to ask specifically about the title. So the title, again, is Medical Freedom in the Constitution, Protecting Yourself from Government Overreach, which now we've mentioned a couple of times. So Sheila, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think what is important are some key words in there, and that is medical freedom and the Constitution. So this is constitutional based. What does the Constitution say? What does the Bill of Rights say? And I think it's important for people to understand that, as you and I and all of us here know, that our rights are given by God. All right, they are, and to be protected by the government. The government is not in the role of giving us rights. They are in the role of protecting our rights. And this is a misunderstanding that many people have. And so we have two constitutional attorneys, Mr. William Olson and Ivan Ranklin, will be there to really discuss the Constitution and what are our rights and how to understand those and how to understand those rights in looking at our medical care as well as other interactions that we have with our government. And as we look at that, and as we look at the illegal mandate from COVID-19, we also have across the country mandates for the childhood vaccine schedule. And these mandates for the childhood vaccine schedule, when I was born, it was 3 to 5 shots. Currently, it's almost 100 shots that a child will have before the age of 18. And the question becomes, is there true informed consent? And for those, and is there recognition of religious exemptions and medical exemptions? And what we're seeing across the nation is the denial of religious exemptions and the denial even of medical exemptions. So this is really a forced government strong arming parents that if you want your child to attend school, if you want your child to participate, you must, under government order, get them vaccinated, whether or not that will be helpful to them. So there's really no choice in this. And so this is really a fundamental problem that we have in this nation. And it's the strong arming in the United States is worse than any other country in the world. All right. And so there are countries that do not mandate the childhood vaccine schedule and yet have 90% compliance. All right. And so what we're asking for in the United States is that we have freedom of choice, and above that we really have true informed consent. So we have Steve Crowling is formerly an employee of Merck and was a whistleblower for Merck. And he's going to educate the audience in detail about the questions that we should ask before we allow anyone to inject a substance into our body and the long-term consequences of that. And that's just a start. I'm sure Stephanie can add some more to this.
Yeah, the subtitle of the conference is Protecting Yourself from Government Overreach. You didn't have to be a federal employee or a medical practitioner or a military service member to feel the overreach of government. I felt it as a mom, just in my house. I mean, my husband was about to lose his job because he would not take the shot. It went to every facet of the American home, this government overreach when it came to vaccines, but it is even beyond that. You saw, we're going to have on in the conference Garrett O'Boyle, who is a FBI whistleblower who went to Congress and had protected disclosures for talking about the board members who were going after moms and dads who were going to the school board meetings and having problems with what they were doing in the school board meetings. They were targeted by the FBI. Garrett went to the Congress and told them about this, and he was put on leave without pay for over 1,000 days, and just recently has made it back into the FBI. Just so happens he and the other people who made these disclosures, protected disclosures, were all unvaccinated. So it is interesting that health has been twisted. This health has been twisted into, it really is a power play. And we are using this to enter people's homes, like under their skin. This is the ultimate un-American act, and it is happening right in front of us. Our goal with this conference is to get to the next generation of federal employees, of military service members, and medical practitioners, the students in college right now who are about to get into the workforce, to open their eyes as to what actually happened and continues to happen daily, and what they can do. And the worst thing they can do is be silent about this. The best thing they can do is have their eyes open and at every turn say, no, I'm not going to do that. And here is what I will do instead. For the federal employees, Jim Erdman, who is our co-founder, has often said the term bureaucratic guerrilla warfare. Use the system to push back. And that means at every single turn, you put in your appeals, you put in your exemptions, you write those email blasts, you go to your commanding officers and you speak the truth and say, no, that is illegal. You cannot do that.
Yeah, that's important. When you talk about everything that your organization does, and we're talking here about government overreach, some of the most important people to stand up and speak out against government overreach are those who are employed by the government, because they're doing it from within. They are resisting or challenging from within, and therefore they can be a very powerful voice in doing so. Now, I did want to go back and talk about the Constitution for just a moment. Sheila, so you mentioned this. You mentioned our rights come from God. They do not come from the government. They don't even come from the Constitution. The Constitution is there to safeguard those rights that come from the God or from God. That's an important distinction that we need to make sure that Americans understand. You rightly say that, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't necessarily understand this. And I believe it was Stephanie, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that there was a previous conference that was co-hosted by your organizations in April that also had as a theme medical freedom and the Constitution, right?
Yes.
Correct. Protecting yourself, your life, and the balance. Okay. So this is really a life and death issue. And that if we rely on the government and you don't understand what is going on in the medical establishment, the government has tremendous power over your life. And it's from all the way from pre-birth to the end of life. And so really understanding, one of our speakers, Dr. Irene Mavrakakis, is going to talk about abortion, organ harvesting, and death, all right? So brain death, okay? What we have assumed is what many people assume is brain death, and what the medical establishment is actually doing in order to simply harvest your organs, all right? And that there is an incentive within the medical establishment to see you as parts, not as a human being. And we need to stand on ethical principles where we recognize the sacredness of human life from conception until natural death. And that we are not products to be bought and sold. We are not products to be experimented on, all right? So that experimentation is, when we look at the transgendered movement in our country and around the world, is really experimentation and the abuse of our young people. Mm-hmm. There is no scientific basis for changing your sex, all right? And we have to allow people and give people the knowledge and information that is necessary to go against their school boards, go against the establishment, who is incentivized by millions and millions of dollars in research money to push this agenda. And it is an agenda that is corrupting our youth. And we need to hold firm. And that's why, the work of those whistleblowers is so critical in protecting parents who are saying, no, we're not going to tolerate that.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you just said, because we have seen this concerted effort to diminish the sanctity of life and then almost to commoditize human beings. And it's horrific when you really think about it and realize what is actually going on. Now, so you mentioned the Constitution, you mentioned the Bill of Rights, just this theme of freedom in general. I do think it's quite interesting that this summit will be held at Patrick Henry College. Just when we think about Patrick Henry and his outspoken voice for freedom, of course, in the founding period. So that is in Purcellville, Virginia. And again, the dates are October 10th to 11th. Now, the previous conference, that was at Liberty University, correct? The one that was in April?
Yes.
Yeah, I was at that one. That was a fantastic event. I thought it was great. So I certainly would recommend that people who can make it to this one, I have no doubts that this one will live up to the previous one that I thought was just a fantastic conference with a lot of great people there. And as you both are detailing some of the themes that will be discussed or some of the speakers that will be present, it sounds like it's going to be a great event. So just kind of as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with, either one of you? Stephanie, we'll start with you.
I encourage everyone to come to this event. We're also going to be joined by Bernadette Pager, who is an informed consent advocate, now working with Stand for Health Freedom in Tennessee. And she's going to be talking about this food supply as well. And the Brad, would you believe that we have talked these many years about vaccine liability shields, but would you believe there's a pesticide liability shield coming
Imagine that.
coming up in Congress right now? So she's going to be hitting on that as well. So it's not just looking back at what has happened, but bringing it to present and say, wake up, you can do something about it. Join us. We need to turn this country around.
And I would say it's all about life and the sanctity of human life. And in Virginia, as everyone knows, we are facing an uphill battle in this coming election. And knowing what is at stake in terms of healthcare and what will be mandated of you and what will be lost is really critical. And so just to educate yourself about what is at stake here in the state of Virginia in the upcoming election, and being able to make a really informed decision prior to casting your vote is really crucial.
Well, thanks to both of you for your strong voice, not just resisting government overreach, but just in terms of freedom in general. I appreciate both of you. And thanks for giving me some of your time today to talk about this event. I know both of you are very strong advocates for freedom. I appreciate both of you for sticking your necks out for freedom. And I have no doubt that this is going to be a fantastic event. So again, October 10th to 11th, Patrick Henry College, Purcellville, Virginia. And the title of the summit is Medical Freedom in the Constitution, Protecting Yourself from Government Overreach. Well, thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to know more about the organizations that Stephanie or Dr. Furey represent, I'll have some about those and more about the event that will be in the description of this video. But thanks, everyone.